My son said, "I'm selling your house. You have 24 hours. You're moving to a nursing home tomorrow." I didn't argue. He didn't know that my lawyer had already knew. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I never thought I'd see my own son turn into a stranger. For 37 years, I raised Michael in this very house on Maple Street, the same house where his father and I built our life together. The white colonial with the blue shutters had been our family's anchor through everything: graduations, weddings, the birth of my grandchildren, and even Thomas's funeral 5 years ago. After my husband passed, the house felt emptier, sure, but it was still mine. Still full of memories I wasn't ready to abandon. Michael visited every Sunday for dinner, always with Jennifer, his wife of 12 years. She'd smile politely, compliment my pot roast, and then spend the evening scrolling through her phone while Michael and I talked. I noticed small things over the months. The way she'd sigh when I mentioned needing a new water heater, how her eyes would light up when she talked about the charming Victorian they'd toured downtown. But I brushed it off. She was my daughter-in-law. Surely she had my best interests at heart. The first real warning came 3 months ago. Michael started asking questions about my finances. "Mom, are you managing okay? The property taxes on this place must be killing you." I assured him I was fine. My teacher's pension and Thomas's life insurance kept me comfortable. But the questions didn't stop. "Don't you think this house is too big for one person? What if you fall and no one's here to help?" Each visit brought a new concern, a new reason why I should consider my options. Then came the pamphlets. Glossy brochures for active senior living communities started appearing on my coffee table after their visits. Sunset Gardens, Golden Years Estates, places with names that tried too hard to sound cheerful. Jennifer would mention them casually, as if she'd just discovered them. "They have activities, Mom, and medical staff on site. Wouldn't that be nice?" I'd nod politely and change the subject, but something cold had started growing in my chest. Last Tuesday changed everything. I was in my garden pruning the roses Thomas had planted 20 years ago when I heard Michael's car pull into the driveway. It was Wednesday, not his usual day. He wasn't alone. Jennifer stood beside him, her expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. They walked toward me with the kind of determination that made my hands still on the pruning shears. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said. His voice carried that false gentleness people use when they've already made a decision for you. We went inside to the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd bandaged his scraped knees and helped him with homework. He didn't sit down. Neither did Jennifer. "I've made a decision," he said, crossing his arms. "This house is too much for you. I've already contacted a real estate agent." The words hung in the air like poison gas. I gripped the edge of the counter. "Excuse me?" "We found you a spot at Evergreen Senior Living," Jennifer added, her voice bright with false enthusiasm. "It's lovely, Mom. You'll make friends, have activities." "I don't want to make friends," I said quietly. "I have a home." Michael's jaw tightened. "Dad left the house to both of us, Mom. I'm the co-owner. I can do this." "You're selling my house?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I've already started the process," he said, and something in his eyes looked almost triumphant. "You have 24 hours to pack your essentials. The movers will handle the rest. You're moving to Evergreen tomorrow morning." I stared at my son. This man who looked like the boy I'd raised but spoke like a stranger executing a business transaction. Jennifer stood behind him, and for just a moment, I saw the smallest smile play at the corner of her mouth. 24 hours. As if 37 years could be boxed up in a single day. As if I were a problem to be solved, rather than his mother. "I'm not arguing with you about this," Michael said, turning toward the door. "It's already done." But he didn't know, couldn't know that his father and I had seen this coming long before Thomas died. He didn't know that my lawyer had already. They left me standing in my kitchen, surrounded by the silence of a bomb that had just detonated. I heard Michael's car engine start, then fade into the distance. My legs felt weak. I pulled out one of the kitchen chairs, the same oak chairs Thomas and I had bought at an estate sale 30 years ago, and sat down hard. 24 hours. My hands were shaking. I looked around at the kitchen I'd cooked in for nearly 4 decades, the worn spot on the linoleum where I'd stood at the stove, the pencil marks on the doorframe tracking Michael's height from age 5 to 18, the window over the sink where I'd watched countless sunsets while doing dishes, where I'd cried when Thomas got his diagnosis, where I'd smiled watching Michael play in the backyard. How could he do this? But I knew how. I'd seen it building for months, maybe years. Jennifer's carefully planted suggestions, the constant talk about practicality and equity. My son hadn't woken up one day and decided to discard me. He'd been groomed for it, slowly convinced that I was a burden, that this house was a waste, that moving me into managed care was the responsible thing to do. I felt tears starting, hot and angry, but I forced them back. Crying wouldn't help. Begging wouldn't help. Michael had made his decision, and somewhere in his mind, he'd justified it completely. He probably even believed he was helping me. But here's what he didn't know. 5 years ago, when Thomas was dying, we'd talked about this exact scenario. Not because we didn't trust Michael, back then we did, but because Thomas had seen his own mother lose everything when his brother sold her house out from under her. "Promise me," Thomas had said, his hand thin and cold in mine. "Promise me you'll protect yourself. You can't predict what grief does to people, what marriage does, what money does." So we'd gone to Harold Patterson, our family lawyer for 30 years. Thomas was still on the deed then, still had full legal standing. We'd restructured everything. The house wasn't in Michael's name at all. It never had been, despite what Michael apparently believed. Thomas had set up a living trust with me as the sole trustee and beneficiary. Michael was listed as a successor trustee only after my death or incapacitation, and the trust documents specifically defined incapacitation in medical terms, requiring certification from 2 independent doctors. In other words, Michael had no legal right to sell this house. None. But he didn't know that. The question was, what did I do with that information? I could call Harold right now. Stop this in its tracks. But something made me hesitate. If I revealed the truth immediately, Michael would be humiliated, certainly. Jennifer would be furious. They'd retreat, regroup, probably try again with different tactics. The underlying problem wouldn't be solved, just postponed. No. I needed to understand exactly what they were planning. I needed to know how far they were willing to go. I stood up and walked to my bedroom. In the back of my closet, behind the winter coats, was a fireproof safe. Inside were all the important documents, the trust papers, Thomas's will, my own will, insurance policies, and bank statements. Everything organized in labeled folders, just as Thomas and I had arranged. I pulled out the trust documents and read them again, carefully, making sure I understood every word. The house was mine, completely, irrevocably mine. Michael had started something he couldn't finish, but I could. I picked up my phone and called Harold's office. His secretary answered on the second ring. "Harold Patterson's office. This is Diane." "Diane, it's Margaret Fletcher. I need to see Harold today if possible. It's urgent." There was a pause, the sound of keyboard clicking. "He has an opening at 4 o'clock. Would that work?" "Perfect, thank you." I hung up and looked at the clock. It was just past 1. 3 hours to gather my thoughts, organize my evidence, and prepare for what needed to happen next. I spent the next hour going through the house, photographing everything. The valuables Thomas and I had collected, the antique grandfather clock, my mother's china, the paintings we'd bought on our anniversary trips. I documented it all on my phone, creating a detailed visual inventory. If Michael was planning to sell the house, he was probably planning to sell the contents too. I needed proof of what belonged to me. At 3:30, I drove to Harold's office downtown. The drive took 15 minutes through familiar streets, past the library where I'd taken Michael for story hour, past the high school where he'd graduated, past the hospital where he'd been born. This town was my life. This house was my life. I wasn't giving it up. Harold Patterson's office was on the third floor of a converted brownstone near the courthouse. I'd been here dozens of times, signing papers when Thomas and I bought our first car, updating wills when Michael was born, settling Thomas's estate after his death. The waiting room still had the same burgundy carpet and leather chairs, the same landscape paintings on cream-colored walls. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like a bunker I was entering before a war. Diane greeted me with her usual warm smile. "Margaret, go right in. He's expecting you." Harold stood as I entered, his silver hair carefully combed, his navy suit impeccable. He was 73, only 5 years older than me, but still sharp as ever. We'd known each other since our children were in elementary school together. His daughter Lisa and Michael had been in the same class. "Margaret," he said, shaking my hand. "Diane said it was urgent. What's happened?" I sat down in the chair across from his massive oak desk and told him everything. Michael's increasingly pointed questions about my finances, the pamphlets, yesterday's confrontation in my kitchen, the 24-hour ultimatum. Harold's expression darkened as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "He told you he's a co-owner?" "Yes, and he's already contacted a real estate agent." "That's what he said." Harold was silent for a moment, then pulled a file from his drawer. I recognized it. The trust documents. He opened it and turned to a specific page, pointing to a paragraph. "This is your house, Margaret. Solely yours. The trust is irrevocable. Michael has no ownership interest until after your death, and even then, it's subject to the terms you and Thomas set up." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I'm here." He looked at me carefully. "You want to know your options?" "I want to know if I can let him try." Harold's eyebrows rose. "Let him try? If he's really contacted a real estate agent, if he's really planning to move forward with this, he's going to put the house on the market. He's going to attempt to sell property he doesn't own. That's—" I paused, searching for the right word. "Fraud," Harold finished. "It's attempted fraud. And if he signs any documents claiming ownership or listing himself as the seller, he'll be committing a crime." I nodded slowly. "I need to know what he's actually planning. If I stop him now, I'll never know how far he was willing to go. But if I let him proceed, you'll have documentation of his intent," Harold said. He studied me for a long moment. "This is your son, Margaret." "I know exactly who he is," I said, and heard the bitterness in my own voice. "Or who he's become. He stood in my kitchen and told me to pack my life into boxes because it was convenient for him. He didn't ask. He didn't discuss. He declared, like I was a piece of furniture he'd decided to discard." Harold leaned forward. "Here's what I recommend. Don't say anything to Michael yet. Let him move forward with whatever he's planning. But document everything, every conversation, every text message, every piece of paper he gives you. If he provides you with listing documents or moving papers, don't sign anything. Photograph everything instead. The moment he attempts to actually execute a sale, we stop it. Immediately." "What about the senior living place? Evergreen? Did you sign admission papers?" "No. He just told me I was going." "Then you're not going," Harold said simply. "He can't force you into a facility without your consent unless he has legal guardianship, which he doesn't. And he can't get guardianship unless he can prove you're incapacitated, which you're not." He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. I'm going to draft a letter that you can use if necessary. It will state, clearly and legally, that you are of sound mind, that you own your home through an irrevocable trust, and that any attempt to sell said property without your consent is illegal. Don't send it yet, I said. I won't, but you'll have it, along with my phone number. Call me the moment anything feels dangerous or out of control. I left Harold's office with a folder containing copies of the trust documents, the unsubmitted letter, and a detailed timeline of everything I should document. It was just after 5 when I got home. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Quiet, familiar, mine. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in the living room, looking at the photographs on the mantel. Michael as a baby. Michael's graduation. Michael's wedding, with Jennifer smiling in her white dress. When had she decided I was in the way? Or had Michael decided on his own? My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Mom, the agent will be there at 9 a.m. tomorrow to take photos and measurements. Please have the main rooms presentable. The moving truck comes at 2 p.m. I read it twice, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. He really was doing this. I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Harold with a short note. It's starting. His response came within minutes. Document everything. Don't sign anything. I'm here if you need me. I looked around my living room again at the life Thomas and I had built. Tomorrow morning, I'd find out exactly who my son had become. The real estate agent arrived at 8:57 a.m., 3 minutes early. I watched from the living room window as she parked a silver Lexus in my driveway and climbed out with practiced efficiency. Navy blazer, blonde hair in a perfect bun, expensive heels clicking on the walkway. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of polished smile that probably worked wonders at open houses. I opened the door before she could knock. Mrs. Fletcher? She extended her hand. I'm Valerie Combs with Premier Properties. Your son Michael hired me to list the property. I'm just here to take some photos and measurements today. Come in, I said, stepping aside. I kept my voice neutral, pleasant. Let her think I was cooperating. She walked through my home with the detached assessment of someone calculating commission percentages. Her phone came out constantly, photographing my living room, my kitchen, the built-in bookshelves Thomas had installed by hand. She measured windows, counted rooms, and made notes on a tablet. Beautiful hardwood floors, she murmured. Original molding. This will show very well. She looked up at me with that professional smile. With a little staging and the right listing price, we should have this sold within a month. That fast? I asked. Oh, definitely. The market is excellent right now for properties in established neighborhoods. Families love these older homes. She moved toward the staircase. May I see the bedrooms? I followed her upstairs, watching as she photographed my bedroom, the guest room, Michael's old room that I'd converted into a study. She opened closets, tested faucets, noted every detail like a general surveying territory to conquer. Your son mentioned you'd be moving to Evergreen Senior Living, she said casually, measuring the master bathroom. That's a lovely facility. My aunt lives there. She's very happy. How nice for her, I said. After an hour, Valerie packed up her equipment and turned to me at the front door. I'll have the listing photos ready by tomorrow, and we should have this on the market by Friday. Michael will handle all the paperwork, so you don't need to worry about anything. You just focus on your move. Thank you, I said, and watched her drive away. The moment her car disappeared, I texted Harold. Agent left. They're listing Friday. His response, perfect. Let them proceed. Don't interfere yet. At 2 p.m. exactly, a moving truck rumbled up to my house. 2 men in blue coveralls climbed out, along with Michael and Jennifer. Michael was carrying a clipboard and wearing cargo shorts like he was managing a college move-out day rather than dismantling his mother's life. Mom, he said, barely looking at me, These guys will pack up everything you're not taking to Evergreen. Jennifer and I will handle coordinating the estate sale for the furniture. Estate sale. The words hit like a slap. I see, I said quietly. Jennifer brushed past me into the house, already directing the movers toward the living room. That china cabinet can go to the auction house. Same with the dining set. The couch is too worn to sell, but the coffee table might fetch something. I stood in my own doorway, invisible, while they cataloged my possessions like inventory at a warehouse. Michael checked items off his list. Jennifer took photos with her phone, probably for appraisal purposes. The movers started wrapping my mother's china in newspaper. Stop! The word came out harder than I intended. Everyone froze. Stop, I repeated, walking into the living room. Put that down, all of you. Michael turned, irritation flickering across his face. Mom, we don't have time for… This is my house, I said clearly. My belongings. I didn't authorize this. We talked about this yesterday, Michael said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. You're moving to Evergreen. You can't take all this furniture. I'm not moving to Evergreen. Silence fell like a curtain. Jennifer's mouth opened slightly. Michael's face flushed red. Yes, you are, he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. We've already paid the first month's fees. Your room is ready. The house is being listed Friday. The house that you don't own, I said. The house that's in a living trust your father and I established 5 years ago. The house that you have zero legal right to sell. I watched the color drain from Michael's face. Jennifer's eyes went sharp, calculating. She recovered faster than he did. That's ridiculous, she said, her voice tight. Michael has been on the deed since Thomas died. We've seen the paperwork. Then you saw paperwork that doesn't exist, I said. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out the folder Harold had given me yesterday. This is the trust document. This is the deed. You're welcome to read them. They're quite clear. Michael grabbed the papers, Jennifer looking over his shoulder. I watched them read, watched the realization dawn. Michael's hands started shaking. This can't be, he stammered. Dad told me. He said when he died, the house would be split. Between us, I finished. Yes, and it is. You get half when I die or become legally incapacitated. Not before. Those are the terms your father insisted on. Apparently, he was wise to do so. Jennifer's face had gone from pale to bright red. You can't do this to us. Do you know how much we've already spent? The deposit at Evergreen, the real estate agent's staging costs, the estate sale coordinator. Costs for services I never authorized, I said. That sounds like your problem, not mine. Michael looked up, and for a moment I saw something raw in his face. Not remorse, but rage. Pure, undiluted rage. You're being selfish, he hissed. This house is too big for you. You're too old to maintain it. We were helping you. By trying to sell my home without my permission? By throwing away my belongings? By reserving me a room in a facility I never agreed to enter? I felt my own anger rising to match his. You didn't help me, Michael. You tried to dispose of me. Jennifer grabbed his arm. We should go. Yes, I said. You should, and take your movers with you. Michael stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he'd never really seen me at all, just an obstacle to whatever plans he and Jennifer had made. They left. The movers followed, confused but clearly wanting no part of whatever family drama they'd stumbled into. I stood in my living room, surrounded by half-wrapped china and overturned cushions, and felt something unexpected. Not victory, not yet, but power. I called Harold. They know. How did they react? Badly. Michael's furious. Jennifer, too. Good. That means they understand they can't proceed. But Margaret, be careful. People who feel cornered can be dangerous. I looked at the mess they'd left in my living room. I know. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. The silence felt deliberate, strategic, like predators watching from the tree line, waiting for the right moment to strike. I used the time to clean up the chaos they'd left behind, carefully returning my mother's china to the cabinet, refolding the linens the movers had pulled from closets, restoring order to my violated home. I also installed a security camera above my front door. The young man at the electronics store had been very helpful, showing me how to monitor it from my phone. Lots of seniors are doing this now, he'd said cheerfully. Safety first, right? I hadn't corrected him. Let him think I was just another worried old woman. The truth was, I needed evidence of any visits, any threats, any moves my son might make. On the fourth day, the doorbell rang at 11 a.m. I checked the camera feed on my phone before answering. Michael and Jennifer, both dressed professionally, both wearing expressions of practiced contrition. I almost smiled. So this was their new strategy. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Mom," Michael began, his voice soft, gentle, the voice he'd used as a child when asking forgiveness for breaking a window or lying about homework. "Can we talk? Please?" I stepped aside. They entered, Jennifer carrying a white bakery box that undoubtedly contained something from Magnolia Bakery, my supposed favorite. Cookies, probably. As if sugar could sweeten this conversation. We sat in the living room, the same room where they'd tried to pack up my life 5 days ago. Jennifer placed the box on the coffee table, unopening it like an offering. "We owe you an apology," Michael said. He actually looked down at his hands, the picture of remorse. We got carried away. Jennifer and I have been under so much stress with the kids' tuition and the mortgage. And when we saw this house just sitting here, so valuable, with just you in it, we thought we were being practical. But we were wrong. Very wrong, Jennifer added quickly. We should have talked to you first. Should have asked what you wanted instead of assuming. I'm sorry, Margaret, truly. I said nothing. I watched them, these performers in my living room, and waited. Michael leaned forward. "The thing is, Mom, we really do worry about you. This house is a lot for one person. What if something happens? What if you fall or have a medical emergency? We're 20 minutes away. That's not close enough if you need immediate help." "I have neighbors," I said calmly. "I have a phone. I'm 68, not 98. I know, he said, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "You're incredibly capable. But Mom, be honest. Wouldn't it be nice to have less responsibility? No yard work, no maintenance, no worrying about property taxes? A place like Evergreen takes care of all that. You could actually enjoy your retirement instead of being tied to this house." There it was. The same argument, repackaged with gentle concern instead of commands. "I enjoy my home," I said. Jennifer tried next. "Of course you do. It's full of memories. But Margaret, those memories are in your heart, not in the walls. You could take your most treasured possessions with you, make new memories in a community with people your own age." "People waiting to die, you mean?" The words came out sharper than I intended, but I was tired of their script. Jennifer's smile faltered. "That's not fair," Michael said. "Evergreen has activities, classes, social events that I don't want." I stood up. "Let me be very clear. I am not moving. Not now, not in a year, not until I decide I want to. This is my home. Your father and I built our life here. I'm not leaving because it would be more convenient for you to liquidate the asset." Michael's jaw tightened. "That's not what this is about." "Isn't it? You and Jennifer need money. This house is worth, what did your agent say? Probably $750,000. Half of that would solve your tuition problems, your mortgage problems, all of it. But it's not your house to sell. Yet, Jennifer said quietly, and something cold glinted in her eyes. It's not our house yet. The words hung in the air like a threat. Michael shot her a warning look, then turned back to me. Mom, I'm asking you, as your son, to at least consider what we're saying. Tour Evergreen with us. Just look at it. If you hate it, fine, but at least give it a chance. Why? I asked. So you can pressure me once I'm there? So you can make me feel guilty for wanting to stay in my own home? I know how this works, Michael. He stood up, his frustration showing now. You're being stubborn. Dad would have wanted you to be practical. Don't. My voice came out like steel. Don't you dare tell me what your father would have wanted. He set up that trust specifically to prevent exactly what you tried to do. He knew that circumstances could make you vulnerable to bad decisions, and he protected me from them. Michael's face flushed. Bad decisions? We were trying to help. You were trying to help yourselves. The silence that followed felt explosive. Jennifer stood up, grabbing the bakery box. We should go. Yes, I agreed. You should. At the door, Michael turned back. His expression had shifted from contrition to something harder, colder. You can't stay here forever, Mom. Eventually, you will need help. And when that happens, don't expect us to come running. I won't, I said. I've learned not to expect much from you at all. They left. I watched through the window as they argued in the driveway, Jennifer gesturing angrily, Michael shaking his head. Finally, they drove away. I sat down on the couch and picked up my phone, texting Harold. They tried the guilt approach. It didn't work. His response came quickly. Expect escalation. They're not giving up. I knew he was right. This wasn't over, but something had shifted in me. When Michael made that threat at the door, don't expect us to come running, I'd felt something break, like a rope I'd been clinging to finally snapping. I wasn't alone, though. That afternoon, I called my book club friend, Patricia. We'd known each other for 30 years, ever since our sons played Little League together. I told her everything, not just about the house, but about the isolation I'd been feeling, the way Michael and Jennifer had slowly cut me off from their lives over the past year. Oh, Margaret, Patricia said, her voice warm with sympathy. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I was embarrassed, I admitted, ashamed that my own son would treat me this way. That's not your shame to carry, she said firmly. Listen, you're coming to book club this Thursday, and we're going to rally around you. You're not facing this alone. After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Not just that I could keep my house, but that I had people who cared whether I did. Thursday's book club was at Patricia's house, a cozy Tudor with a fireplace that crackled while 6 of us sat in her living room drinking tea. They'd all heard what happened. Patricia had briefed them, and the support was immediate and fierce. Your son tried to sell your house? Eleanor, a retired nurse, looked scandalized. Without your permission? That's elder abuse, Donna said flatly. She was a social worker, still working part-time at 70. Financial exploitation. You could report him. I don't want to report him, I said quietly. He's still my son. Then he's a lucky son, Rita muttered. We talked for 2 hours about family dynamics, about adult children who saw their parents as burdens rather than people, about the importance of having legal protections in place. I left Patricia's house feeling lighter, validated, reminded that I wasn't crazy for being angry. But the peace lasted only 3 days. Sunday morning, Michael and Jennifer appeared at my door again. This time they weren't alone. A woman in her 50s stood between them, professionally dressed in gray slacks and a burgundy blouse, carrying a leather portfolio. Mom, Michael said, this is Dr. Elaine Hartley. She's a geriatric care consultant. We've asked her to do an assessment. My stomach dropped. An assessment of what? Dr. Hartley smiled, warm and professional. Mrs. Fletcher, I understand there's been some family disagreement about your living situation. I'd just like to have a conversation with you, ask some questions, maybe tour the home to ensure it's safe and appropriate for independent living. It's nothing to worry about. Everything inside me screamed danger. This wasn't a friendly chat. This was Michael's new strategy. If he couldn't force me out, he'd try to prove I was incompetent. I don't consent to any assessment, I said clearly. Michael's expression hardened. Mom, be reasonable. We're worried about you. Living alone at your age, in a house this size, we just want to make sure you're safe. I am safe, and I don't need a stranger evaluating my home or my mental state. See? Jennifer said to Dr. Hartley. This is what we've been dealing with. Paranoia, resistance to help, refusal to acknowledge basic safety concerns. I felt rage flare hot in my chest. I'm not paranoid. I'm protecting myself from a son who tried to steal my house. Steal? Michael's voice rose. I was trying to help you. You're being irrational. Mrs. Fletcher, Dr. Hartley interrupted gently. I understand this is stressful. But refusing assessment when family members express legitimate concerns can itself be a sign of... Get out, I said. All of you, now. Mom, Michael started. Get out. My voice didn't shake. You have 10 seconds before I call the police and have you removed from my property. Dr. Hartley looked uncomfortable. Perhaps we should reschedule. There won't be a rescheduling, I said. I am of sound mind. I own this house, and I'm exercising my right to remove unwanted visitors. Jennifer's mask finally slipped. You're going to regret this, she hissed. You think you can just cut us out? We're Michael's inheritance. This house is Michael's future. You're just being selfish, clinging to a pile of bricks because you're too stubborn to admit you need help. Jennifer, Michael grabbed her arm, his face pale. Not now. But she yanked free, her eyes blazing. Why not now? Let's be honest for once. She's sitting on $750,000 while we're drowning in debt. Our kids need college funds. We need a bigger house. But no, she'd rather die in this place than give us what we deserve. What you deserve. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You deserve nothing. This house is mine. Thomas left it to me, specifically to protect me from exactly this kind of greed. You want to know the truth, Jennifer? Your husband isn't entitled to a single brick until I'm dead, and I'm planning to live a very, very long time. The silence that followed was absolute. Dr. Hartley had gone pale, clearly realizing she'd walked into a family war, not a concerned wellness check. Michael looked between his wife and me, something broken in his expression. Fine, Jennifer said, her voice shaking with fury. Fine, but don't come crying to us when you fall down these stairs or have a stroke alone in this empty house. We're done. Michael, let's go. She stormed off toward their car. Michael lingered, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Hurt, anger, something else underneath. I was trying to help, he said quietly. I really was. No, you weren't, I replied. You were trying to solve a problem. I was the problem. But I'm not going to apologize for existing, Michael. Not to you, not to anyone. He turned and walked away. Dr. Hartley gave me a professional nod. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Mrs. Fletcher, and followed them. I closed the door and locked it, my hands shaking now. I made it to the couch before my legs gave out. For several minutes, I just sat there, breathing hard, feeling the adrenaline crash. Then I picked up my phone and called Harold. They brought a geriatric consultant to assess my competency. Jesus Christ. Harold's calm demeanor cracked. Did you consent? No, I threw them all out. Good, good. He paused. Margaret, we need to escalate our protections. I'm drafting a cease and desist letter to Michael and Jennifer. No more surprise visits. No more attempts at manipulation. If they continue, we'll pursue a restraining order. Do it, I said. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and felt something unexpected. Not fear, but determination. Jennifer had shown me exactly who she was today. The mask had slipped, and underneath was pure, naked greed. They wanted me gone. They wanted my house. They wanted their inheritance now while they could enjoy it. But this wasn't their story. It was mine. And I wasn't done writing it yet. Harold's cease and desist letter arrived at Michael's house via certified mail on Wednesday. I knew because Michael called me at 7:47 that evening, his voice shaking with rage. A restraining order? You're threatening me with a restraining order? Only if you continue harassing me, I said calmly. I was in my kitchen, making tea, the phone on speaker. The letter is clear. No more surprise visits. No more consultants. No more attempts to manipulate me into leaving my home. I'm your son. Then act like it. He hung up. I sipped my tea and waited because I knew this wasn't over. I was right. Saturday morning, they came back. All three of them, Michael, Jennifer, and someone new. The security camera caught them approaching. A man in his 40s, expensive suit, carrying a briefcase. I didn't open the door. Mom, Michael called through the door. Mom, please, we need to talk. This is Marcus Wheeler. He's Dad's financial advisor. We found some discrepancies in the trust documents. We just need you to look at some paperwork. I picked up my phone and dialed Harold, putting it on speaker so the camera would record. Harold, they're at my door claiming there are discrepancies in the trust and want me to sign paperwork. Don't open the door, Harold said immediately. Don't engage at all. Mom, Michael pounded on the door. Mom, don't be ridiculous. This is about protecting your interests. I'm calling the police, I said loudly through the door. You have 30 seconds to leave my property. This is my property too, Michael shouted. You can't keep me out forever. Actually, she can. Harold's voice came through my phone speaker, loud enough for them to hear. And if you don't leave immediately, you'll be arrested for trespassing. The cease and desist letter was very clear. There was silence. Then Jennifer's voice, sharp and vicious. You're going to die alone in that house, Margaret. Old and alone and forgotten. I hope it was worth it. I watched on the camera feed as they left. The man in the suit, Marcus Wheeler, if that was even his real name, looked uncomfortable. Good. He should be. But I felt a chill run through me. Jennifer's words weren't just angry, they were a promise. Harold drove over that afternoon. We sat in my living room, and he reviewed everything that had happened. They're getting desperate, he said. That's when people become dangerous. What can they actually do, I asked. Legally? Try to prove incompetency, which requires medical certification you won't give them. Contest the trust, which they'll lose because Thomas's documentation is ironclad. Or, he paused. Wait. Wait for what? For you to die. For you to actually become incompetent. For something to happen that gives them legal standing. He looked at me seriously. Margaret, I want you to consider adding additional protections. Updated medical power of attorney that specifically excludes Michael. Maybe talk to your doctor about putting your competency on record. And frankly, I think you should consider whether there are people in your life you trust more than your son to handle your affairs. The words hurt, but they were true. Patricia, I said, my book club friend. She's been wonderful through all this. Would she be willing to be your medical power of attorney? Your executor? I nodded slowly. I think she would. Over the next week, Harold updated my documents. Patricia agreed immediately when I asked her. Of course, she said fiercely. Your family, Margaret. Real family. We made it official. Patricia had medical power of attorney. She was also designated as my executor, replacing Michael. My will was updated to split my estate equally between Michael and a charitable foundation, one that supported elder abuse prevention. If Michael contested it, his share would go entirely to charity. He'll be furious, I told Harold as we signed the final papers. He's already furious, Harold pointed out. This just protects you. 2 weeks passed quietly. No calls, no visits, nothing. I almost let myself relax. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. A woman in professional attire, carrying a briefcase with the seal of Adult Protective Services. My blood ran cold. This was Michael's nuclear option. I called Harold before opening the door. APS is here. Don't panic, he said. You've done nothing wrong. Be cooperative but careful. I'm coming over now. I opened the door. The woman was in her 30s, with kind eyes but a firm demeanor. Mrs. Fletcher? I'm Shanice Williams with Adult Protective Services. We received a report of potential self-neglect and safety concerns. I need to conduct a welfare check. Who filed the report? I can't disclose that, but it was a family member expressing concern for your well-being. She smiled gently. This is just standard procedure. May I come in? I let her in because refusing would only make things worse. She walked through my home, taking notes. The house was clean, well-maintained. My refrigerator was stocked. My medications were organized in a weekly pill dispenser, all current prescriptions. Mrs. Fletcher, may I ask you some questions about your daily routine? We sat in the kitchen. She asked about my eating habits, my social activities, my medical care. I answered honestly. I cooked for myself, attended book club weekly, saw my doctor regularly, maintained the house with help from a neighborhood handyman for major repairs. The report suggested you were isolated and potentially experiencing cognitive decline, Shanice said carefully. I don't see evidence of either. Your home is well maintained, you're articulate and oriented, you have social connections. My son is trying to force me into a nursing home so he can sell my house, I said bluntly. This is harassment, not concern. Shanice's expression shifted slightly. I see. Has he attempted to gain control of your finances or property? Yes, multiple times. My attorney has issued a cease and desist. Do you feel safe? The question hung in the air. I thought about Jennifer's words on my porch. You're going to die alone. I thought about Michael pounding on my door, about the fake financial advisor, about every manipulation and threat. I feel safe in my home, I said carefully. I don't feel safe from my family. Shanice nodded and wrote something down. Mrs. Fletcher, I'm going to close this case as unfounded. You clearly have capacity, you're managing well independently, and you have support systems in place. However, I'd like to give you some resources. Numbers for elder law attorneys, victim advocates, and so on. What you're describing sounds like financial exploitation, which is a crime. Just then, Harold arrived. He introduced himself and provided Shanice with copies of the trust documents, the cease and desist letter, and a timeline of Michael's actions. Shanice reviewed everything, her expression darkening. Mr. Patterson, Mrs. Fletcher, I want to be clear. Whoever filed this report was attempting to misuse our services to harass a vulnerable adult. That's also a crime. If this continues, you might consider filing a police report for elder abuse. After she left, Harold and I sat in my living room. They filed a false APS report, he said. That's going in our documentation. Margaret, I think it's time we went on offense. What do you mean? I mean, we file for a restraining order. We document every incident. And if they continue, we pursue criminal charges for attempted fraud and elder financial exploitation. I looked at my lawyer, this man who'd known me for decades, who'd drawn up my wedding documents and my husband's will. He's my son, I said quietly. I know, Harold said gently, but he's not acting like one. And you have a right to protect yourself. That evening, I sat in Thomas's old armchair and looked at the family photos on the mantel. Michael as a little boy, gap-toothed and smiling. Michael at his graduation. Michael on his wedding day. When had I lost him, or had I ever really had him at all? My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The trust can be contested. Dad wasn't in his right mind when he signed. Talk to us before we take this to court. I forwarded it to Harold, then blocked the number. They weren't giving up, but neither was I. The court summons arrived 3 weeks later. Michael was contesting the trust, claiming Thomas had been unduly influenced by me and was not of sound mind when he signed the documents. They were seeking to have the trust invalidated and the house sold, with proceeds divided according to original intent. Harold wasn't worried. They have no case. Thomas was examined by 2 doctors before signing. He was completely lucid. We have medical records, video of the signing, witness testimony. They're going to lose, and it's going to cost them thousands in legal fees. The hearing was scheduled for December 14th. I had 2 months to prepare. Those 2 months were strange, quiet on the surface, tense underneath. Michael and Jennifer made no more attempts to visit, no more phone calls, no more texts. Just silence. And somewhere behind that silence, their lawyer building a case that would fail. Patricia came with me to every meeting with Harold. She'd become more than a friend. She was my advocate, my witness, my sister in all but blood. The rest of the book club rallied too. Eleanor helped me organize documents. Donna connected me with support groups for family financial exploitation. Rita simply showed up every Tuesday with groceries and conversation. I wasn't alone. That was Michael's biggest miscalculation. December 14th arrived cold and clear. I wore the navy suit I'd bought for Thomas's funeral, pearls he'd given me on our 30th anniversary. Patricia drove me to the courthouse. Harold met us there, carrying 2 thick binders of documentation. Michael and Jennifer sat on the opposite side of the courtroom with their attorney, a sharp-featured man in his 50s who kept checking his watch. Michael wouldn't look at me. Jennifer stared straight ahead, her jaw tight. The judge was a woman in her early 60s, Judge Martha Brennan. She reviewed the filings with meticulous attention, then looked up at Michael's attorney. "Counsel, you're claiming Mr. Fletcher lacked capacity when he signed this trust?" "Yes, Your Honor. He was terminally ill, on significant pain medication, and our psychiatric expert believes he was unduly influenced by Mrs. Fletcher." "Your expert examined Mr. Fletcher?" Judge Brennan interrupted. "Well, no, Your Honor. Mr. Fletcher is deceased, but based on medical records—" "Let me see those records." The judge read for several minutes. According to this, Mr. Fletcher was examined by 2 independent physicians 6 days before signing the trust. Both certified him as fully competent. He wasn't on pain medication that would affect cognition, and the signing was videotaped with multiple witnesses present. She looked at Harold. "Do you have that video?" "Yes, Your Honor." Harold provided a USB drive. We watched Thomas on the courtroom screen, sitting in Harold's office, looking thin but absolutely lucid. He explained clearly why he was creating the trust, how he wanted to protect me, how he'd seen his own mother lose everything when family members tried to take advantage after his father's death. "I love my son," Thomas said on the video, his voice weak but firm. "But I love my wife more. This is her home. She gets to decide when and if to leave it. Not him, not anyone else." When the video ended, Judge Brennan looked at Michael's attorney. "Counsel, do you have any evidence beyond speculation that Mr. Fletcher lacked capacity?" "Your Honor, the circumstances themselves suggest—" "That's not evidence, that's conjecture." She turned to Michael directly. "Mr. Fletcher, did you visit your father before he died?" Michael stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Did he seem confused or incompetent to you?" Michael hesitated. I watched him weigh lying versus admitting the truth. "No, Your Honor, he was himself." "So your own testimony contradicts your claim." Judge Brennan closed the file. "I'm denying your petition. The trust is valid and will stand as executed. Mr. Fletcher clearly knew what he was doing and had every right to protect his surviving spouse's interests. Motion dismissed." The gavel fell like thunder. I closed my eyes, feeling 5 years of fear and anger drain away. Michael's attorney tried one more time. "Your Honor, we'd like to request—" "Dismissed, counsel." And frankly, this was a frivolous filing that wasted the court's time. If you pursue any further challenges to this trust without substantial new evidence, I'll consider sanctions. She looked at Michael and Jennifer. Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher, your father's wishes were clear. His widow owns that house. Respect his decision and stop harassing her. We stood. Across the aisle, Jennifer's face was white with rage. Michael just looked defeated, broken. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered standing in my kitchen while he told me I had 24 hours to pack my life. I remembered the movers wrapping my mother's china. I remembered Jennifer hissing that I'd die alone. The pity evaporated. Outside the courthouse, Harold shook my hand. It's over, Margaret. They can't touch you. What happens now? Now, you live your life, and they have to live with their choices. Patricia hugged me tight. I'm so proud of you. I looked back at the courthouse doors. Michael and Jennifer emerged, not speaking to each other. Their attorney was already walking away, probably calculating his unpaid bill. I'd won, not just the house, but something bigger. My dignity, my autonomy, my right to live my own life on my own terms. That evening, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, looking at the photographs on the mantel. I took down the one of Michael's wedding and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd want to see it again. But not today. Today, I wanted to remember only this. I was stronger than I'd known, and I didn't need anyone's permission to stay in my own home. Life after the hearing settled into something I'd forgotten was possible. Peace. Real, genuine peace. The restraining order was granted. Michael and Jennifer couldn't contact me or come within 500 feet of my property. They never came. The silence was absolute. I threw myself into living. Patricia and I took day trips to museums and gardens. I joined a yoga class. I volunteered at the literacy center, tutoring adults. The house stopped feeling like a fortress and became a home again. I repainted rooms, planted tulip bulbs, finally lived. 6 months later, I heard through neighbors that Michael and Jennifer were divorcing. Their house was in foreclosure. They'd taken out a second mortgage, counting on my house to save them. It explained everything, though it didn't excuse it. Part of me wanted to help, but I didn't. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. A year passed. I heard Michael moved to a small apartment, working 2 jobs to pay debts. Jennifer moved back to her parents' house out of state with my grandchildren. It should have made me sad. Instead, I felt peaceful. They'd made their choices. My life was full. Book club, online courses in art history and Italian, planning a trip to Tuscany for my 70th birthday. I'm telling you this story because you are never too old to fight for yourself. My son tried to take my home, my dignity, my autonomy. He failed because I refused to be a victim. If you're facing something similar, document everything. Protect yourself legally. Find people who see your value, not your vulnerability. Never let someone else define when your story ends. I'm 70 now. I live in the house I fought to keep, surrounded by friends who chose me. I've never been happier. What would you have done? Leave a comment below. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to go quietly. Thank you for listening. Remember, your life is yours until you decide otherwise. Don't let anyone take that from you.